Alright, so now that we understand how the coefficient A affects the graph, let's start taking a look at B. How does changing the coefficient B affect the graph? Well, what I'm hoping you came up with is, from our lab, is that B shifts the parabola left to right. What we'll start to see is, like if I take this parabola right here, it'll start to actually move either left or right based on what B is. Alright, and so take a look at the next slide. And again, all this we should copy down. Whoops, didn't fit on the screen. Alright, now this gets a little tricky because there's actually a couple different situations here. And it all depends on A. A, as you remember, one of the things it told us is whether we're going to get a right side up U shape or an upside down U shape. So here, let's take a look. We're going to set B equal to 0 as our parent graph. But more importantly, notice that we're dealing with a U-shaped graph, a right side up U shape. Well, it turns out that when it is a U-shape, like I've got right here, if B is greater than 0, or a positive number, the graph will start to shift to the left. Now notice it shifts down, but that's only because one of the things we haven't talked about yet is the y-intercept, that it needs to be able to shift to the left yet still keep the same y-intercept. It needs to cross the y-axis at the same point. So mainly it's shifting to the left, but it'll also tend to shift down because it's trying to stay at this y-intercept here. So you can kind of see how it as it shifted left, it kind of had to slide along this point as if it was connected there. Now, you would expect this next part to be just the opposite, which it is. If B is less than 0, in other words, a negative number, the graph then shifts to the right. Now, here's where it gets tricky though. So first, copy all this information down for when it's a U shape. Okay, but now make a new graph and let's take a look at the other situation. What if the graph is an upside down U shape? Go ahead and make another graph here. So we're looking at upside down U shapes, in other words, parabolas that look like this. Well, it turns out everything flip-flops. Well, kind of makes sense. If your graph flips upside down, then some of the information that we understand will kind of reverse as well. In this case, what I'm talking about is this. This time, again, B is a positive number. It's bigger than 0. But because it's an upside down U shape, the graph shifts to the right this time, not the left. So we have to look for two things. We have to look to whether it's a upside down or a right side up U shape, and then look at B. So in this case, because B is a positive number, shifts to the right. And then, of course, the reverse is true. If B is less than 0 or a negative number, it shifts to the left. Alright, so we've got two different sets of information for B. Alright, so keep track of that in your notes because that's probably one of the trickier parts to predicting what our graph would look like.